Yeah.
Salary sacrifice, that's a great question. I'm not entirely sure I understand that either. So you definitely need to cover that one off, Claudia.
Yeah, I will do. Sure, we'll get some good questions.
So yeah, super. We've got salary sacrifice. We've got people from Cheshire saying, would love to find out about immediate next steps. So that's brilliant as well to know. We're going to go over some tangible tips for that. We've got people in Norfolk, Southwest Scotland. I'd like to know how investing in a personal pension weighs up against investing in general. Brilliant question. And I asked that to my financial advisor last year. We've also got people saying, if I can rectify being late to start my pension. The fact that you're here means you're already rectifying it, and it is never too late to start investing in ourselves. I'm 39 this year and only started a couple of years ago, okay? So good. We've got other people saying personal pensions, what would be ideal? So again, if you are literally just jumping in, I want you to pop into the chat box where you're dialing in from and what you would ideally like out of this hour. We will try and do it in this hour, but if we don't, at least we've got it and we can come back to you, hopefully with some answers or at least some signposting. We've also got how to get the best out of all pension pots from different jobs together. Another question I asked my financial advisor last year and I got some great answers. So Claudia is writing these all down. I can see her with her pen. So this is brilliant. So keep them coming.
Amazing.
So
go on, Ebony, go for it.
I was going to say, so we are here tonight to talk about, is it too late to start a pension? I'm not going to give it away, but it's not. So we are here to say, you know, the best time to plant a tree is now, is today, okay? Of course, it's great if you do stuff earlier, but it's also great to do it now. And I want to remind everyone, so many of you have been with us on this journey, but I want to remind you that there is absolutely no such thing as a stupid question. You have tonight in here 3 of the VetYou members, plus the wonderful Claudia. So you've got Katie, Matt, myself, Ebony, and Claudia in the room. So if you don't want to ask in the group, although I guarantee if you're thinking it, I bet you the other people in this chat will also be thinking it. But if you don't want to ask it, you can ask any of us anonymously. Also, if you hear anything you're like, I don't understand what that means, what does that acronym mean, is that jargon, call it out, because we are getting a nice little fund ready for Vet Life. Every time that we are called out with jargon, we give to Vet Life. So please do call us out, because it really helps to demystify and simplify, because we are here to smash the stigma on talking about cash, finance, and our future. And for those of you that don't know who VetYou are, we want to be the home of the independent you as a veterinary professional and beyond. And we're here for all members of the team. And we're kind of working in a pillar of kind of a triad of 3 things. If you think about a stool and it's got 3 legs, we have your health. We want to support your health, we want to support your income, and we want to support your future. And that's about all of us individually taking action for what works for us. And what Claudia will go on to say is that that's the whole point about working with financial advisors and working with VetYou, is that everyone's story and everyone's needs are just slightly different. So that's what we are here to do. And again, you don't need to read all this out to you, but we are here, like I say, to help signpost, to educate, and to create a community where we can actually talk about finance. We're going to show you in a minute on another slide. We've got event every month on various things that you have asked for, be that in polls, social media requests, emails, you name it, working from students to retirees and everything in between. And every single one of our events online every month is free to attend, and you can submit your questions beforehand. We can hook you up with calls to actions afterwards. So you get access to speak to financial advisors for free, speak to the VetYou team for free, and help you take action. Because so many people have popped, and some of you put this in the chat today, what's my first immediate next step? And that's exactly what we want you to do. We want you to take your head out of the sand. I've had my head in the sand about finances for years. So it's just so important that we help you to take action so that you can put yourself at the center of your financial future and take action. And tonight it's all about the Future Fund, which is the pension. And the beautiful thing is, yes, Katie, Matt, and I and Paul, we're all veterinary professionals from different backgrounds, small animal, farm, business, entrepreneurship, portfolio careers, events, you name it. The beautiful thing is we have teamed up with financial partners and connections who get it. They have an interest in veterinary medicine. Their own financial stories have resonated with us. Lots of the reasons why they got into this profession, their financial profession, is because of very similar things to us. They care deeply. They've got high empathy, good leadership skills, amazing problem-solving abilities, and really want to help us. And we are really, really delighted to have Claudia here with us today from Amicus Health. And she works with an array of different providers, but also has an interest in loads of different financial solutions and support. And actually her personal story, which I hope she will go into slightly, really captivated us. And we only work with people who resonate with us, who we know will resonate with our community. And we're absolutely delighted to have Claudia here. So I'm going to hand over to let Claudia take it away. But again, for those of you just come in, no such thing as a stupid question. Get it in the chat. Direct message any one of VetYou personally in here. If afterwards you're thinking, oh, we should ask that question, you can email hello@vetyou.co.uk.
Great, thanks Ebony, and hi everyone, thanks for having me. It's good to be here. So I just start off with a little bit about myself. So I'm a London-based financial advisor, although working from home pretty much the whole time now due to COVID, which is nice. Still seeing a few clients in the office just to break things up a little bit. But I've been working for Amicus Wealth for about 7 years now. We're a city-based financial advisor, regulated by the FCA through Quilter Financial Planning, who some of you may heard of. We deal with all the very basics from wills, insurances, estate planning, up to more sort of complex tax planning, and then everything in between like pensions, ISAs and other investments. So if you've got any questions about anything, you can sort of feel free to ask me after. I'll just touch on what Ebony said. So the reason I sort of got into the industry was sort of being a little bit frustrated about not really knowing anything about my own finances from leaving university. I started to have a look into different professions and different things, mortgages, investments. I had no idea. It's not something that we learn at school. So it was really that made me do a little bit more research and get involved into the industry. And it's amazing how many people and even clients I speak to who are really senior in their jobs don't actually know sort of what they're doing finance-wise. So yeah, like Ebony said, if there's any questions, it's not a silly question. Someone else probably is thinking it. So yeah, do please ask anything that you need to. So I will just sort of crack on with the presentation. So we're going to talk about pensions today, the main title being whether it's too late. Again, as was said before, it's not too late. There's always a benefit in investing into a pension, sort of even if you're later on in your career. But I think someone mentioned in one of the in the chat box, so Hermione says about auto enrollment. So she's just been moved to an auto enrollment scheme. So that's a new government sort of rule, basically saying that actually now employers, they must make a contribution to an employee's pension, and it has to be a minimum of 3%. Employees must contribute at least 5%. So you've got about 8% of your qualifying earnings going into a pension, which is good. So you should know whether you're part of the auto enrollment scheme by checking your payslip. You'll probably know because you'll have received lots of paperwork and been inundated with emails from HR or some other pension provider just letting you know. And you'll also see the deductions on your payslip. Now, as Hermione mentioned, she has moved from a workplace with a good contribution, so it might be slightly higher than the 8%, or maybe pushing sort of 15 to 20% perhaps, and then move to a employer with just the auto enrollment, so really making the minimum. There are things you can do to sort of get back to those levels that you were contributing before, and we can talk about that as we go sort of further into the presentation, and if anyone has any questions on that, we can go through it. But yeah, just as a sort of basic, the employers must make a minimum contribution of 3%. It does differ somewhat to older pensions, and if anyone's heard of a final salary and how good and generous they are, the auto enrollment's a little bit different. So we're sort of having to make up our own, and really it's the responsibilities on ourselves at the moment to save into pensions rather than just relying on our employer to do that for us. So I'm going to go into a quick video just to really talk about the pension tax relief. It's a really good short explanation, so hopefully this makes sense to you all.
To reward you for taking responsibility for saving for your retirement, the government tops up the savings you put into your pension. It does this in the form of pensions tax relief. The amount of tax relief you'll get is based on the highest rate of income tax you pay. If you don't pay tax or you're a basic rate taxpayer, you'll get tax relief at 20%. This means you only need to contribute £80 to receive £100 into your pension. Higher rate taxpayers only need to contribute £60 to receive £100. Most people can put £40,000 a year into a pension and earn tax relief. This is called the annual allowance, but any contributions above this allowance will be subject to income tax at the highest rate you pay, so don't go over that limit. If you're a basic rate taxpayer, you probably won't have to do anything, but higher earners may have to reclaim the relief through a tax return. If you're part of a company pension and your employer operates under net pay arrangements, the tax relief will be automatically added to your pension. But if it runs a relief at source scheme, higher earners will have to do a tax return. The same applies to people who have a private pension outside of their job. Pension tax relief can be confusing, so Which is here to help. Visit which.co.uk/pension tax to find out how it works and what you can do to claim it.
Cool. So the video just basically briefly explains how the tax relief works on their website as well, which we can reference after if anyone wants to get some further information. And there are some really good tools as well on how pensions work, calculating the tax, and also you can just ask me as well. So it's something that we look at. So yeah, the main benefit of pensions is the tax relief that the government provides. There's not really any other sort of basic investments that provide you with that tax relief. So you have things like an ISA where you can invest tax-free, but you don't actually get any benefits from the government. So it's really worthwhile making use of any allowances that you can, because it's the only sort of tax relief the government are going to give you. And at the moment, especially, it's worthwhile trying to get any of that you can with tax reforms coming in and all inflation, taxes going up. It's a really good allowance to be able to utilize. I was just going to run a quick poll, Ebony, if that's all right. So just to see how many people know what age they want to retire. So if anyone's ever thought about it, or they know in their heads exactly when or a particular age.
So yeah, do you know what age you want to retire? We've got, I have no idea. We've got less than 60, we've got 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, down, all the way until over 75. So you've got 10 options there to pop. You might have a different option, in which case do you pop it into the chat. It's something that I had not thought about. Katie, had you thought about it?
What's the state retirement age?
It depends on when you were born, but it's currently 68.
Yeah, 68. And what might it be in 30 years' time?
I dread to think what it might be, but it's not looking good for some of us.
I was going to say, with life expectancy of millennials due to be 100, I'm going to predict that state retirement age will be in excess of 75.
Which is,
I feel like in my mind, I'd love it to be like 65, but like you've just said, Matt, the 100-year life really is a thing, isn't it? So
yeah.
Ooh, I'm interested to see what people are voting here. So where are we up to?
So we've got 36% saying I have no idea, and that is the largest percentage of which people are placing. After that, it is between 61 and 62 at 15%, and then an array after that. But the very fact that so many of us, and I would be in the same camp as you, I have no idea at 39% is what we've got going on, Claudia.
Cool. Okay, that's really interesting. I'm not surprised. I mean, I think, like you said, Emily, myself as well, I ask my clients and generally they have no idea. It's sort of really helpful, I think, to break it down and sort of say, well, if you know when you might want to retire, or at least have an aim point in mind, you can then work backwards and say, well, if I know I want to retire then, how can I get to that stage? What are the ways that I can start to work towards that goal? And then it's also a good idea to have a backup plan and sort of say, well, actually, what's worst case? When do I definitely want to retire? When do I not want to be going into work sort of Monday to Friday every day? You might want to go down to a couple of days a week, that kind of thing. Just give yourself some choice financially, but you don't have to be completely dependent on your job. I'd say that's something to maybe just have a think about, and a takeaway from this is really start to think about when you might look at wanting to retire and what kind of lifestyle you might need in retirement, because that helps yourself, but also your advisor or whoever you're speaking to, your partner. It helps you plan for the future, and it basically makes a bit more sense of pensions, and you'll see why they're so important. But thanks for that. That was good. Do I just click off? Yeah, cool. So changes to pensions then. There's been quite a lot of change since the pension freedoms were brought in. Lots of different styles of pensions are around. There's something called a final salary pension, which you may have heard. There's annuity pensions, defined contributions, loads of different ones. With a work scheme pension that some of you were speaking about, it's usually what's called an occupational pension. If any of you are lucky to have a final salary scheme, they're great. They're really reliable pensions. They're generally quite generous. They also keep up to date with inflation, so they're inflation linked, meaning that they hold their value, which is something that might be quite beneficial in the near future. But I'll just give you a quick example as to why I'm sort of speaking about these final salary pensions. So the way that a final salary works, and this is generally true of those who might be retiring now, who are at an age of retirement at the moment, that they're possibly retiring off of a final salary, because we've sort of seen the last of those being offered, unfortunately. They were getting a little bit too expensive for employers to offer, to fund. So we tend to see more of a defined contribution pension now, where you actually contribute and you are invested in the market, so you'll be invested in a fund. So with final salaries, how they worked is that you would accrue generally a 1/60th of your final salary for every year that you worked at a firm. So there's an example on the screen. If you retire on a salary of £50,000 after 20 years of work, or 20 years in that pension scheme that has an accrual rate of 1/60th, you take 20/60ths and times it by your final salary, so the leaving salary, that would generate £16,666. So that's annually on top of your state pension, which may be sort of around the £9,000 mark. You're looking at a fairly healthy annual income that you would have got through basically doing nothing. That would have been done on your behalf through your employer, through a final salary scheme. Final salaries tended to cost the scheme between 20 to 30% of an employee's salary to fund. So we can compare that to the auto enrollment, which we spoke about earlier, which is basically 8%. So there is a little bit of a gap at the moment compared to people who may be retiring today. Pensions used to be a little bit more generous, and that's why it's so important for us to consider actually taking some responsibility, maybe doing some additional contributions if possible, and looking at some other options. So we'll just move on to the next slide. If anyone has any questions throughout this, obviously just feel free to put them in the chat box, and I'll try and pick up a couple as we go. But reasons for investing in a pension then. So it's obviously, as I said before, one of the most tax efficient ways to put money aside for later life and provide you with an income when you retire. So rather than just saving into cash or something that you'll potentially withdraw from, it's a vehicle that you can't access until you choose to retire. So make sure it's money that you don't need, but it's a really tax efficient way to invest because the government give you that top up, which you're not going to get anywhere else. The state pension, as I said, only provides you with circa 9,000, 9,300 at the moment, depending on your year of birth as well. The amount will differ in the retirement age, but generally it's getting later. So we're seeing people retiring later. As Matt said, the life expectancy is going up, so I'd expect the state pension age to go back. Make use of the government tax top up. So in some cases it's higher than 20-25%, depending on what your tax bracket is. And also, if you're operating through a limited company, pension contributions are tax deductible, so it reduces any corporation tax or taxable income. So it's quite a tax efficient vehicle for those who may operate under a limited company. Not sure if we have many of those here, but something to consider for the future. So next slide, please. This was something that I thought might be useful. The main things to think about when choosing to invest in a pension. So what type of pension is it? Do you have a employer pension that you've been auto-enrolled in? Or if you don't, if you're self-employed, for example, you may have a private pension or something called a SIP, which is a self-invested personal pension. Do you have old final salary pensions from previous employers or older deferred schemes? There's lots of different types of pensions out there. So it's a good idea to basically get a hold of what you've already got, what type of pension it is, and what it could potentially get you in retirement, to then, as I said earlier, sort of work back and decide actually what you need to do to get to that retirement age or that goal in later life. The second thing I think is quite important to consider when choosing a pension is what kind of funds are available. So do you have access to a lot of funds? Is it a platform? So generally we find with platforms there's a huge array of funds and they all work in similar ways. So they offer a real range of, say, single equities or a fund of funds. Occupational pensions might have, say, 10 lifestyle strategy funds where they just do the investment for you. You put the money in and you don't need to do anything. They're sort of actively managed by the fund itself. The third one is the charges. So when you're looking at pensions, consider what they're charging you. So consider what the charge for the product is. So the actual pension wrapper itself, is that charging you? What's the fund charge? Do you get any discount as part of a group scheme? Is there any advisor charge on there? And if there is, are you using the advisor? Are they helping you? And are you finding it beneficial? If not, then there's no point in paying for that advice. So there's a few things to consider about charges. And the last one, it sort of touches on charges again. It's the charges for switching funds. So if you decide that you want to de-risk your portfolio, for example, in your pension, are you going to be charged for making that change? And also when you come to actually take your funds in retirement, which is called either drawdown or taking an income, are you charged for those? So there's 4 sort of key points I'd say to look out for if you're considering setting up a pension, or if you've got one or various pensions at the moment. These are some things to look out for. Next slide, please. Benefits of saving early then. So just going to run another quick poll, if that's okay, Ebony. I just want to know how many people have thought about how much they might need to retire on, or how much they'd like to retire on. Might be a similar.
This sounds like a 1970s game show.
It does, doesn't it?
Play your cards right. Higher, lower, lower, higher.
There's no wrong answer, though.
Yeah, so you got, and everything here, by the way, everything's anonymous. We can't see what you pick.
Yeah, we can.
There are 4 options here. I have no idea, and that is okay. I have a rough idea. I think I'm sorted, or feeling very confident that I know how much I need. And I think what you'll see here is you're in good company and you're not alone in any of the choices that you pick tonight.
What does it cost to sip sangria in Spain in retirement?
I'm just going to use your house, so I don't know. I'm going to be riding off the coattails of your retirement. So I'm not going to bother with my own. No, I am. So look, so far we have 75% saying I have no idea, 25% saying I've got a rough idea, and we've got nobody currently in I think I'm sorted, or I'm feeling very confident that I know how much I need. So again, you are not alone. And I know that, you know, some of the younger members of the VetYou team would also be in the same camp as you. So the people here who are even putting on this event also understand that concern, which is why we've got people like Claudia here to help us. So you are not alone, and it is totally okay that you have no idea.
Yeah, definitely. So thanks for that. So yeah, majority is similar, I guess, and these two do link really well together. So not really knowing a retirement age links in with not really knowing how much money, and it might be due to things like uncertainty, or you just really haven't thought about it before, haven't really had a reason to think about it. But starting as early as possible. So now it's not too late, but now that you've sort of come here and we're talking about this, it means this is the sort of start point. So we can talk about having sort of, I don't know, there's no sort of golden figure in mind. We'll come on to a few examples later, but it's really having enough to suit your lifestyle. So at the moment, if you think about you're working pretty much all the time, you might be paying rent, or you might have a mortgage that you're paying off. So you have sort of really fixed outgoings that you know what you need to pay, whereas in retirement you might be mortgage free, for example, if you have a house, or you might still be paying rent. You may want to downsize, or you may move abroad, but you're not at work, so you won't have, say, commuting costs, but you will have a 7-day weekend. So you need to fill that with things that you enjoy doing. So do you have expensive hobbies? Do you enjoy traveling? It's a really personal question, and there is no right or wrong answer, but it's something that, again, second sort of takeaway point is to have a think about your lifestyle at the moment, what you'd like to do in retirement. Is it just you? Is it you and your partner? Do you have children? All of these things will basically make up what you might need in retirement. I think there are some recommendations which I'll come on to, but I just quickly wanted to go on to the benefit of saving early. So just on the chart on the screen now, you'll see the effect of what's called compound interest. So starting slightly earlier, so i.e. now, rather than waiting and 5 years, for example, if you started now, even saving small, you can really see the effects. So if I don't know if you can see my cursor, but the top line to the blue line is starting earlier. So age 25, that investments, Chris invests 5,000 annually between the age of 25 and 65. So there's really consistent there, the same amount he's investing throughout that time period. Bill invests the same. So he invests 5,000 annually, but he starts 10 years later. So between 35 and 65, and you can see the sort of shortfall there. So by starting earlier, so now rather than in 5 years' time, you can see the effect that the compound interest on the performance of your investment has. Again, you can see it with Susan. Same thing, she invests slightly later. So starting earlier, I know probably not many people here are 25. There might be some 25-year-olds, and if you are, then you could be in this position, but just shows you the power of compound interest. And if you are able to start now rather than leaving it sort of 5 or 10 years, it will really put you in a better stead for the future. So next slide, please. This one's just a bit of a fun one, really. A lot of people say the £1 million mark, or you're supposed to get to £1 million in a pension. This is also in dollars. So yeah, this was just something I took off the web, but it just shows you on the left, you've got the monthly savings to get to £1 million, which at age 20 was $361. But by the time you're 25, you then have to increase that to $499 if you haven't done it from age 20. And then if you look all the way up to 60,000, you're going to be age 60, you're going to have to contribute 14,000 monthly, which I think is pretty extraordinary. So it just shows you that if you do start a little bit earlier, then you might perhaps, that if you can afford to save a little bit more, it might put you in better stead for the future. It's a really hard one though, because when we're sort of in 30s, 40s, it's a really expensive time. You might have a house, kids, all of those kind of things. So actually saving that kind of money isn't possible. So a lot of people do sort of start to save at the later end, but you are able to potentially save a little bit more than you would in your 20s. So it's about playing catch up a little bit. But yeah, next slide, please. Around 12. So yeah, good reasons for starting late. As we said, it's not too late. A lot of people do worry about not having started saving early. Some people didn't have a pension or haven't had a pension in the past, and there's nothing wrong with that. There are lots of good reasons to start now. As I just covered, expenses of raising children. You might have, I don't know, school fees or expensive hobbies that you need to pay for them. Family wise, there might be things going on that are sort of really quite expensive for you, and with a bit of luck, yeah, as you said, as you're getting older, monthly mortgage payments might be ending, so you might have a little bit more disposable income. So it's a good time to start, even if you are feeling like you're starting a little bit later than everybody else. Yeah, you've got the opportunity to put some sums aside for retirement, and obviously the main benefit that we spoke about earlier would be that tax relief. So getting the tax relief from the government, because unfortunately you are also taxed in retirement. So even though you've built up all of those savings, you'll also be paying a little bit of income tax depending on how you take your pension. So it's really worthwhile trying to get as much as you can from the government benefits, pension wise, as possible. So yeah, next slide, please. this again just shows, as I covered before, the power of compound interest. So compound interest is the interest on the growth. So if you remain invested for now throughout those years, not only do you get the growth year on year, but you're also getting the growth from the previous year. So it really adds up, rather than starting later and only having those few years where you'll save that single amount per year. You don't have the opportunity for investment performance, which we've seen global growth has been really quite extraordinary for the last 5 to 10 years. It may not be as good as we've seen for the next few years, but sort of history shows if you stay invested, you'll likely be in a better position at the end of it. So the compound interest is something that's really important, and really relevant with the pensions, because again, you're investing at different times. If you decide to do monthly contributions through your employer, for example, it's really good because you're accessing the markets if you're in an investment at different times of the year. So rather than putting in a big lump sum now, and markets go up and down, so if you're investing consistently month on month, you'll be in a really good position sort of towards the end of your retirement. So next slide, please. I'm trying to think if there's any questions I've missed on here. So how much do I need? I think this was one of the questions that we had. I feel like I've sort of already covered it. It really depends on what you do. So like I said before, do you have really expensive hobbies, or do you like traveling? Will you need to pay a mortgage, or will you need to pay rent in retirement? And then obviously things like your fixed costs, you've got food, energy bills, which are rising massively. So think about all of those fixed costs, and then have a little fun pot for things that you need to enjoy doing in retirement, because you've got a lot more free time. You're going to need to keep yourself entertained. As a rule of thumb, they say you need to invest, or you might need an income of between 50 to 66% of your salary pre-retirement. It gives a little example here. So if you earn 30,000 a year, you'll want your pension to pay between 15 to 20,000 to be comfortable. We also have to bear in mind inflation. So the value of your funds today may not be the value of your funds in, say, 10 to 20 years time, which is why investing is so important. You really want to keep the value of your money that you're investing. You've worked hard to earn it, so making sure that it holds its value through investing is really important. And then it says everyone's different, so you might need more or less depending on what your future plans are. Next slide, please. This is just a little scenario that I took off of one of the calculators, which I'll go through because I think it might be really useful for people to, or those that answered, I have no idea. This will be really good for you, and I'll link some calculators below. So you can use some calculators online. They're called sort of retirement calculators to work out, if you save by X amount, how much would that potentially get you in the future? So for this one, I started with a person age 45 who hasn't got anything in pensions to start with. They start contributing 17% of their £50,000 salary until their retirement age of 68. With the state pension and their investment of 17%, they will accrue an annual income of £27,000 per year in retirement. So if you did start that late in retirement, if you start at age 45, this is purely your pension asset. So you've still got quite a lot of time between 45 and your, say, retirement age of 68, or some of you said 60, 61. Just think about that timeline. Like an investment timeline needs sort of five to 10 years. So as long as you're within that period, then it's okay to start investing, and you can really see the benefits. I also did, what if you increase this by £300 a month? So the same person, nothing in pensions at age 45, but starts to increase their pension contributions, meaning that they're contributing £1,000 per month. That would get them an estimated annual income of £32,400. So you can see the difference of about £5,400 by increasing that monthly amount. And again, that's due to things like compound interest. This does assume an annual growth rate of 5% and full state pension. So obviously just check with your national insurance records and all of those assumptions when you're using these calculators, because they do make certain assumptions that you just need to be aware of. But they're a really good, useful tool as to sort of work out how much you need to contribute year on year to get to where you want to be. So yeah, next slide, please. as in, we've covered this before, what outgoings will you have? Will you still be paying mortgage or rent? Consider what lifestyle you want. Will you explore the world, improve your home, or just live a quiet life? One thing that I find quite common with a lot of my clients is that they have children at the moment. So they have a house where they've got maybe more bedrooms than they need when they're in retirement. So you don't have children living with you, hopefully. They might have moved on or working, got their own houses potentially. So you might actually be in a position where you will downsize. And a lot of people will potentially be able to take equity out of their property, for example, and that can act as a saving pot. So it doesn't necessarily have to be that amount in pensions. It can be made up of lots of different things. So even though you think you haven't started, there will be elements that you've built up throughout your life and your career that you can use in your retirement, but a pension is just one of the most tax efficient vehicles to use alongside that. But it will work with all of your other assets that you've got, so it's important to consider. And the last point was, will you want to help out your children and grandchildren financially? Again, we can consider this as part of the overall picture about how important would that be for you, is something to consider as well. So great, next slide, please. Retirement calculator. Oh, I did have some links here, but I don't think they have come up. They might be on the next one. So this, oh yeah, next one, there we go. So this retirement calculator basically just shows if you're on your way to your goal, getting closer on track. A lot of them basically just ask for your age at the moment, what your income is, and what your current level of savings is. And that can be either just using your current pension savings if you have any, or it can be zero, or it can be using savings like just current account or savings account. So they're a really good tool. And on the next one, I linked some other calculators. So Your Wealth, Money Advice Service, and Nutmeg. I can send these. Oh yeah, Katie said you can get links for these if you need to. So these are really good tools just to make certain assumptions. So what will the growth rate be if you did it year on year, for example? What amount you do, it projects how much it would potentially get you, and it's a really good tool to use when you're looking at planning your retirement. So when you sit down with your partner or your children or whoever it is, use these because they're really useful. So next slide, please. Just some sort of final points from me on this. So things you can do if you think it's too late. So the first one is save more. I know that's a really sort of frustrating one because actually you might not have the disposable income at the moment. But if you are able to save a little bit more than you're currently doing, say through auto enrollment, saving more is going to put you in a better position if you are starting late, because as we saw through those graphs, the 35 to 55-year-old had to save a lot more on a monthly basis than the client who started at, say, age 20. So yeah, you'll be saving a lot more. So that's one thing. Retire later. I know, again, it's not a very nice thing to think about, but you can push your retirement age back if you feel you're not in a position to retire on the level that you need. Again, using these calculators and having discussions about retirement and what you need will enable you to see when you'll want to retire and whether you need to push that back and what your goal is. So yeah, saving more, retiring later are the two sort of main things you can do to negate the fact that you may not have started as early. But the main thing is being just start now, because it's really not too late. Changing lifestyle factors, I covered this. So looking at how expensive your retirement's going to be, or whether you've got property you might sell or you might move abroad, those kind of things. And then consider any windfalls. So is there going to be any big expenses that you need to cover between now and retirement? Are you going to have any lump sums of money? You're going to get any bonuses or anything else that will come to you that you weren't expecting, that you can include in your retirement plan as well. These are all things that will affect your overall sort of age and retirement income goal. So next slide, please. So this was one of the questions I think that was pre-submitted, so I'll just cover it quickly. Is it worth investing in a pension at age 50? So you still have 17 years left to invest at age 50. if you're retiring at 67 or 68, even 18 years, that's a long time in the investment world, and it's a long time for you to get that compound interest and get some performance gains. So yes, definitely, if you're 50, still invest. This is still relevant for you. So yeah, keep investing. So if you are approaching a retirement age or think you're too late and you haven't done anything yet, you can just sort of go back through these slides, look at the graphs, and sort of see the tax relief that you'll get through investing in pensions. 17-year timeline, for example, is a long time. Lots of people don't start till later on. So I'd really encourage you, if you are in that bracket and you haven't started yet, or if you perhaps have pensions from employers from years and years ago that you haven't got track of, you don't know what they're worth, get a hold of those, see what they're worth now. That means you can put them in the calculator, and then it will reduce what you then need to save from now until, say, age 68. But yeah, really do consider investing, or at least getting a hold of what you had previously in pensions, to make sure that you're making the most of what you've already got. Next slide, please. Tips. So plan for the longer term. So like I said before, 5 to 10 years is a good investment horizon. Obviously 17 years plus. Some of you might be sort of, I don't know, late 20s, 30s as well. So you've really got a long time to invest, which means you can afford to potentially take a little bit more risk because you're younger. You don't need to access that money so soon. Determine your risk profile. So that's one you could speak about either with your advisor or do a little bit of research yourself. So are you happy to take risk with your money? Are you happy for it to be invested in markets? There's a sort of risk reward argument. So you're not going to get too much reward if you leave it in cash. At the moment, with inflation rates where they are, that money's not going to be worth the same as it is today. So yeah, have a consideration for your risk profile and be broadly diversified in a portfolio. So have a look at what your pension currently is invested in. Is it diverse? Is it spread across a lot of different assets? So being different sectors, different regions. So is it all US equity focused, for example? That tends to be a quite common occupational pension. You might want to consider diversifying a little bit. Stay disciplined. So if you decide to yourself you're going to invest X amount per month into a pension, make sure you do it consistently as long as it's affordable, because then you'll see the real benefits of that over time. And the last one is don't wait for the right moment, start now. So I think that's a big takeaway from today, is to really start now. Next slide, please. And then yeah, I think we're on to the questions. If you want to go ahead with some of those.
Claudia, that has been an absolute brilliant whistle-stop tour. And what we have put in as well is a link for you to have a one-on-one chat with Claudia for half an hour. So Claudia is super helpful. Some of these questions that you want to ask are very personalized, so it's really good just to take that time out to do that. We've had a really great question, which I have also asked recently, and I've actually just switched my pension fund for this. What about moving or starting your pension where it's going to be a bit more ethical, a bit of more of a feel good investment? So what can we do there for green? And just to caveat that as well, the last event we ran last week was all about sustainable investment. So we'll put the link in there for others if they didn't get to see that. But Claudia, it'd be really helpful to have your input on that as well. Yeah, definitely. So I think it's a really big sort of moving market. It's definitely something that's fairly new. So there's new funds coming to the market sort of all the time that focus on sustainability, and some of those older funds are realizing that they have to take some responsibility sort of socially and ethically, which is really good. There are some certain specific pension providers who will only invest in, say, ESG or ethical funds, but with pensions, if you're on a platform, or it depends how you're invested, generally occupational pensions, so work scheme pensions, I don't think, from my experience, have a huge amount of ESG funds. It's purely because they are occupational or workplace pensions tend to be a little more basic. It's not the case with all of them, but it tends to be a little bit more basic. Pardon? When I worked for a charity, they were great. Were they? Yeah, I think it does depend on who you're working for. But yeah, check with your pension provider that you're currently in and see if they have
an option for ethical investing or like a socially responsible fund. And if they don't, then you have options to go with other providers who may have slightly more ethical focus, or have a better responsibility, and invest in only those funds. There's a sort of screening process that you can go through. I've done it with a few clients where you can either positively or negatively screen certain types of investments. For example, if you don't want to invest in say tobacco, for example, if you work in healthcare or things like that, people don't want to have association with certain things from a sustainability point of view, or environmentally, or whatever it might be. And you can screen those funds to work out what percentage of that fund is invested in certain areas, and then you can make your choice based on that evidence where you'd like to invest. Like I said, there are pension companies who only invest in sort of social responsible funds, so there's lots of options out there for you.
Which is brilliant. So if you really want to make that switch, then book a call with Claudia as well. And if some of you are like, I just want to quickly do it, or I don't know, I just want to just do that myself, then we have also got a session on with Raindrop later in the year, and they are people that can kind of collate your funds and move them into kind of areas that you want. But I always suggest that you take the opportunity to speak to a financial advisor before making any decisions, because people like Claudia and our other awesome professionals will provide some really great free advice before you make any decision. So I really do ask that all of you take up her half an hour free slots, which there are just a few of them, so just take them up and have a chat about that as well. So Claudia, we've got some other really good questions coming in here. And like some topical questions here, like, how can I ensure that my pension isn't involved with something I don't like? So it's kind of similar to the ethical point, but with Russia, or things going on in other parts of the world, Afghanistan, etc. How can you kind of know that they're not involved in any of those kind of stock?
So with this, it depends on the fund that you're invested in. So I find a really good tool is called TrustNet online. I don't know if anyone's heard of it, but it's TrustNet, and it gives you a breakdown of your funds by asset and by sector and region. So you can type that into, say, Google or wherever, or into TrustNet itself. Type in if you know the name of your pension fund from your paperwork that you have from work, you'll be able to see exactly what regions are invested in, and you'll be able to know whether you're directly related in, say, Russian stocks here. So you can also ask your advisor, if you have an advisor who will work directly with a fund manager, because it can be difficult to get clear-cut direct information about.
It can be really difficult, can't it? And also, like, how far do you go? Because actually, where's that line? Of things, really.
We've seen it quite a lot over the last few weeks. Everyone's sort of writing in saying, have I got any exposure to Russia? And it's sort of fund managers I've been working with have sold down their Russian assets, direct holdings, but obviously it's a big economy and there's a lot of that's invested over there. So you will have some indirect exposure, possibly, depending on where you're invested in. But it can be a little bit tricky to get the exact breakdown from fund managers. So if you have an advisor or someone that you work with, ask them and they will be able to get the information. If not, I would definitely recommend something like TrustNet, which will break down at least the fund in the region, and it will give you the largest holding, so the actual underlying equity that you're invested in, where you'll be able to see what you're invested in. Hopefully that helps.
That's great. And she TrustNet, that was a really good
TrustNet,
pop that into the replay email as well. So another question that's come up multiple times, both privately and in the chat, is it better to combine work-based pensions that we've had previously, or is it better to keep them separate?
That's a good question. There's not really a clear-cut answer again on this one. I'd say if you have older pensions, just be careful if they have any guarantees or benefits. So some pensions, especially older ones, hold something called protected tax-free cash or a guaranteed annuity rate. So they're basically little benefits that the scheme give you. So if you were to move or combine pensions that have those benefits, you could potentially lose out on those. So it's really important to do your research before you decide to move pensions.
How do you find out if that's the case?
Pardon?
How do you find out if that's the case?
So you can speak to an advisor who can write to your pension provider, or you can actually ask your pension provider or HR if it's a workplace pension, and you can ask them directly whether there's any protected tax-free cash or guaranteed annuities or any benefits associated with your plan. They should be able to tell you. if you're asking for a transfer of pensions, it's generally best to ask for a transfer quotation, which should include all the information that you need on that. So I'd say be careful about transferring some older ones. But I would also agree that it makes sense to combine them, one, so you know where everything is, and you can have an easier handle on it. And also, two, for investments, you might have different funds invested across different pension providers, but if it's all in one place, you're able to better diversify because you can select different assets for different proportions of the fund, whereas if it's in different pensions,
Right?
you're less likely to maybe manage it. So yeah, there's a yes and a no answer to that one.
I really like that. So before I hand over to Katie and Matt, who've got some anonymous questions of their own that have come in, just recap there. So you want to ask whether you want to ask HR or the pension provider. What were the three things you said about?
So there's quite a few different ones, but the main things to be wary of is if there's any protected tax-free cash.
Yep.
Yeah, the second one would be a guaranteed annuity rate.
Guaranteed annuity rate.
And then the third would be a guaranteed minimum pension. So they're the three things that you just want to be wary of before you move them.
Really, really good to know. So that's brilliant. So Katie, over to you, and then Matt.
Brilliant. Well, first of all, thank you, Claudia. You did touch a little bit on limited companies right at the beginning. And as you'll know, quite a few of our locums might work through limited companies, or we've got vets and vet nurses that have diversified out and have started companies themselves. So one of the anonymous questions that came through is actually about making those contributions as a limited company director. And they've said, I'm currently contributing through my limited company as an employer, contributing to the pension. Would it be more beneficial for me to contribute to my pension as an employee contribution, i.e. a salary sacrifice? Or is there a different alternative option to recommend? Just in general, sort of limited company directors and the most efficient way to input into a pension, I guess, Claudia.
Yeah, this one's a little tricky because it depends on how you're taking your salary, and if you're taking your salary, your wage as a salary or dividends or a combination of the two. So it's a little tricky to answer, but generally the making a director's pension, so a pension contribution from your limited company as the employer, will be the most efficient option because it will reduce things like your corporation tax, it will reduce your national insurance, it will basically bring the costs down to invest over gross into your pension. But it does depend on if you're taking an income from your company as well, and how that's structured. So whether you're taking it as a basic salary and then you're topping up with dividends, or vice versa, how you're doing it. But in general, having a limited company is a really tax efficient way of making those pension contributions. So I definitely suggest doing that, and make sure you speak to your accountant as well, just to make sure that you're making the most of those allowances.
Brilliant. Thank you, Claudia. Such a comprehensive answer. And again, I realise that a lot of the questions that we ask here are quite top level, and if there are individual circumstances to discuss, I know, as we've said, Claudia has kindly gifted some of her time for you to chat through those as well, which we've popped the link into the chat box, and we'll do that again as well. I was going to ask Matt, have you got any of your anonymous questions there to ask as well?
Absolutely. So we're hearing that maybe contributing to a personal pension alongside a workplace pension is a good idea. Can we contribute to a pension if we're out of work, if we're not working or taking a career break, for example?
Yeah, you can. You can contribute to, it would be a personal pension if you're taking a career break or out of work. In certain circumstances, you can look to use previous tax year allowances. So say, for example, you have a year out, but you haven't used your full, say, £40,000 allowance from the previous tax year, you may be able to look at doing an additional lump sum to cover off that tax year, to use the full allowance. If you don't have any allowance left from the previous tax years, you can use your stakeholder allowance, which is £3,600 currently, that everyone can invest in, whether they are earning or not. But then also just be mindful of any other income you have. So if you have a rental property or any income from other sources, that can be used as income for which you would qualify for pension tax relief. So yeah, have a think about all your other income. If you haven't got a job necessarily, you might be able to look back to previous year and just make sure you're using those allowances. But yes, in short, you can, even if you're not working.
Great. And if we're out of work, or maybe we're not earning very much, is there a minimum that we can put in either on a monthly or an annual basis?
No, so there's no minimum. What I would suggest though is working out yourself what's affordable. So you need to, if you're not working, it might be that you need to have an emergency fund. So you need to consider things like house repairs, car repairs, things like that, unforeseen things that you, once you put money into a pension, you won't be able to get access to it until retirement. So it is one of those long-term vehicles that we spoke about earlier. So before you decide and commit to monthly contributions, even if they're small, however small they are, just make sure that it's affordable to you and that you've got enough disposable income to do so. But I would definitely start small, at least get that pension open with a little bit of a little monthly contribution. And you can always increase that as things go.
And my last question, and this did come on the chat, but I feel a lot of empathy here. When you're slightly older, you might have collected a number of pensions through your working life from different employers. Is there any easy way to go and try and track down those lost or forgotten pensions?
Yeah, so there's a number of ways you can do it. The government tracing website allows you to put in details of any old pensions, where you can track those down. It's quite old though, I have to say, so sometimes some of the pensions aren't on there. I know Raindrop also have a pension tracing website, which one of you might be able to link, so that's really useful. You can just pop your own pension in there. I think it needs your national insurance number, or third option is speak to an advisor. So the way I work with clients is I take national insurance number, details of the client, where they worked, the years they worked, and then we go and track down those pensions from the providers themselves, and then we gather all the details and give a recommendation based on whether it makes sense to combine them or whether it makes sense to leave them where they are. So there's a few different ways you can go about doing it, really. Also ask friends, old colleagues, if they know if they've got any paperwork or things like that, if it's really old. Some of the schemes might have wound up, so yeah, just try all three of those maybe if you can't find it.
Thank you. That's great advice. Thank you, Claudia.
No problem.
And it looks like any more questions? We're coming up to time here. There's been some great ones, but there's a question here around, is there any good pensions investment for dummies courses? Ooh. I mean, clearly, this is being recorded, so we would love to share this with everybody today. You can go to the VetYou website where we have a whole host of extra information, but actually this is about a personal approach to you. So if you've got the time, and Claudia certainly has got the time to support you, I can't advise you strongly enough to be able to spend a bit of time speaking to an IFA so they can understand your personal circumstances and really give you some bespoke advice. Katie.
Brilliant. So thank you, Claudia, for an absolutely fantastic session. I always learn more every time we come on and learn about pensions, but that was so well explained. Managed to fit a huge amount into just a short period of time, but I can see that the chat, we've had lots of light bulb moments and you've answered some fantastic questions there as well. So a huge thank you from all of us at VetYou, and a huge thank you to everybody that's been here this evening as well and have sat there and given yourselves the time to answer the question, is it too late to start a pension? Which I think we've answered. It is absolutely not too late, and we've got some fantastic calls to action now just so that we actually move forward as a result of this as well. So the first one is, we would love you just to reflect on what your key take home has been, as Ebony put it in the chat, what has made you go ping this evening and has been that light bulb moment. So please do pop that in the chat box for us, because we would love to know for you just to reflect on and for us to see how well that messaging has come across as well. Is there anything else that we can help you with? You've asked all sorts of amazing questions in here. We can help direct you. We can help introduce you to Claudia as well. We do have her Calendly link, which again is in the chat box too. But if there's anything we can help you for, you do not have to wait until the event that is titled the topic that you're interested in. Just drop us an email. We can help you before then as well. Don't forget to check out our full events menu. We've got loads of stuff coming up. We'll list the next ones that are coming soon, but we are always adding to that as well. So please make sure that you go and check that out. Follow us on social media. You'll find out what we're up to. We put loads of content out, loads of educational stuff, loads of highlights from the events, and importantly, let you know what is coming up as well. Claudia has kindly gifted some 30-minute slots for you to have a chat with her. and your individual circumstances. We know as members of the vet profession that we can learn about topics that are top line. Our clients could go off and research certain conditions, but actually to know the intricacies of the best thing for you to do next is to go and speak to a professional that's put those years in researching and learning about it already. So if there is an action that you take off the back of this, then please do take one of those opportunities to speak to Claudia as well. And finally, spread the word. We would love it if you would spread the word with any of your colleagues that maybe have found these topics to be a taboo as well, because that is why we're here, to break down the barriers, to make financial advice and education more accessible within our profession, because you all work super hard for your money. You've all trained long years. You do a fantastic job, and it's only right that you're in a position where you can take full control of that and protect your health, your income, and your future as well. So finally, a huge thank you again to Claudia from us. A huge thank you to all of you that have been on here as well, listening this evening. And we'd love to see you on our next events, which we are collaborating with the British Veterinary Chronic Illness Support on a topic that is specifically around finances and chronic health. I know it's quite niche, but if anyone is worried about things like income protection, can I still get it with chronic conditions? We've got that coming up. We've also got a session with one of the VetYou founders, Paul Horwood, talking about how to ace salary negotiations. So that is one you don't want to miss, because that might pay you back dividends from investing an hour of your time into that one as well. So all the links to sign up are in the chat box. And I can see we've got some fantastic takeaways. Start paying in today. Yes. Getting it all scheduled to start making a dent this week. Amazing. And start a pension, not go and get a pizza. Although I'd quite like pizza as well. I think it's time for some food. So thank you again to everybody. And we can't wait to see you on the next event. So we're so grateful that you've spent the evening with us. And again, we're here if we can help you with anything. And thank you once again, Claudia. It has been fantastic.
Thanks, everyone.
Yay. Thank you, everyone.